Donna, when I make you make sure not to connect to audio.
Of course, I have my speaker on my computer. Okay,
Even if it's muted, it'll still give.
okay, so I'm
So
going to
just say, don't connect to audio.
audio. I'm just gonna-
Are we supposed to be on Zoom?
No, I just like to
Oh,
see
See the people.
and then that way I can see this way. I can see. I don't always do that. See,
One day when we have a real town hall, I'll actually have monitors at each of the stations. We're gonna get fancy up in here.
sounds expensive though.
I was just gonna say,
It sounds like something when we get some commercial in here.
something like that, yeah. All right, Tony, you're ready to go whenever.
Okay. We'll now call to order the November 21st Town of Hideout Planning Commission meeting. First on the agenda is a roll call. Rachel?
Here.
Joel? Here. Donna?
here,
Glynis?
Yes.
Tony is here, Peter and Chase are excused. Next item is approval of the October 17th meeting minutes. Do any of the commission members have any questions regarding those minutes? There being none, would someone like to make a motion?
I make the motion that we, for the approval of our meeting minutes from October 17th, 2014.
24.
2024.
Oh, 2024, I'm
I'll
sorry.
second that. Thank you. Okay, we will take a vote then. Rachel,
Yes.
Joel? Yes. Anna,
Yes,
Glynis?
I wasn't here.
You could have read them.
I did.
Just
I
abstain.
did. Put it in the
Abstain.
minutes.
Okay, I'll
Abstain.
abstain.
And Tony's a yes, therefore we will accept the meetings as they are. Okay. Before we go into the public hearings, because of the 4 items that are on the agenda, all being somewhat lengthy, each item will be limited to about 30 to 35 minutes maximum, with about 20 to 25 minutes left. Alicia will let us know so the planning commission members and or the public can answer any questions. If we do not get through your whole presentation, it will be put over till next month's meeting. Okay, anyone who wants to make a public comment, when it's time, please step up to the podium, state your name and your address, and you will have 3 minutes for what you want to say. Okay, that being said, first item on the agenda is the discussion and recommendation to town council regarding approval for shoreline phase 4 subdivision. This item is continued to a date certain of December 19, 2024 at 6 o'clock, and there will be no discussion, public discussion of this during this meeting.
Can we just make a motion real quick to?
Certainly. Someone would like to make a motion to put this over?
I move that we move this to a date certain of December 19th.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll vote. Rachel,
Yes.
Joel,
Yes,
Donna,
yes,
Glynis?
Yes.
And Tony's a yes, therefore, well, that will be continued to them. Next item on the agenda is discussion and possible recommendation to the town council of an ordinance regarding updates related to subdivision procedures pursuant to the Senate Bill 174 and House Bill 476. Okay. Thomas, I don't know if you want to jump on in regard to that, or are we just going to turn it over to
I think what we'll do is we'll have Jay walk through this with you all. He is attending by way of Zoom, so he'll walk you through this.
Thank you. Jay, go ahead, please.
Thomas, I think you have some some additional stuff here too that I didn't see before. I made a small handful of additional changes that I sent to you, Jay and Thomas and Alicia and Kathleen. So I thought maybe it would be better to use that one with those additional changes, but I didn't notice, Thomas, that you had some notes as well. Are there a lot, or is it just,
No, I don't think that it is. No, I don't think so.
well, I'm just seeing here, it says TE notes.
That is for a checklist that we would have to create as a part of the ordinance approval.
Right. So did you have other notes in this that you know of? That you recall?
I don't think so, but I will check as Jay starts walking through this. I will check.
And who's sharing screen?
That's me. I will switch over to the one that you sent us earlier.
Okay.
Is that the one you have now, Alicia, the one that was sent today?
No, I think that's, yours, but let me get, Polly's up here. Okay, do you see that with the red?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me just make a note too that we also need to have an actual enabling ordinance. I will draft that right now while Jay is going through this.
Okay, so do you now have that one pulled up?
Yes, this is the one that I sent today. That was what you sent out, Jay, and I made a few other amendments.
Right. So when we last talked about this, we did talk about quite a few things in detail, took that feedback and also got feedback from the council last week, reiterating kind of that pattern that we talked about in this process of going and treating the preliminary as a largely comprehensive single step process where the final is really just approving, not any real substantive checks, but putting it in the Mylar recordable format and finalizing it, and then really emphasizing that optional concept review and pre-application meeting process to encourage that, even though it's not required for those subdivisions. We've also talked about at the council last week whether this process that we're changing should apply only to the extent required by the new law, which is for those single family, two family, and townhomes. What we have done since the last time we met in terms of the draft is really overhaul those procedures to clarify and put the subdivision improvement plans and the review cycles in that preliminary process, which means that we will be looking at basically a complete application on day one, with the option that they can bring the application, the concept for non-binding review, and we've tried to encourage that. Obviously, I think that's realistically what most applicants are going to want to do before they incur all the engineering costs. So the changes that we have are in the red line. They include both what we brought to you last time and the new changes to incorporate those comments. Because we've already gone through this once, I didn't feel like we needed to go through each individual line item. To Thomas's note, one of the big things on the discussion last week with the council was about those engineering standards and checklists. And we've had additional discussions about what that looks like. And I think this came up at the last meeting as well, that those standards do need to be adopted by the council. The checklists are forms that I don't think they need to go to the council, but certainly in working with these procedures, we do have a requirement to post to them and publish them so that they're publicly available. And those are the checklists that Thomas's notes are referring to. So I think rather than go through line by line, I want to see if any of the planning commissioners had any questions in addition to what we had addressed and raised at the last meeting. I know you've had a chance to kind of digest more since then, so I'd welcome any comments, and then we can look at any specific sections. But the overall direction and why we opted to bring it back rather than act on it last session, in my recollection, was to really get those changes in to front load this process to that preliminary application. And then, as Paulie's well aware and Thomas, whenever we have the chance, whenever we're looking at these, we're going to take the opportunity to clean up things that we see. There's always more to be done. We do the best that we can at any given juncture. So, and I think, Paulie, I think I have a sense of what your changes were, but I didn't. I had some commitments this afternoon, wasn't able to review it between when you sent it and this and right now.
Okay, well,
So-
and maybe, so, I can just, the big things are that I made it clear that for final review of the plat, so the planning commission is going to review the preliminary plat with the subdivision improvement plan as Jay just went through. The final plat will be reviewed by our town planner. And Jay, I think you got confused by my different towns, and this one still said administrator, so I fixed that. Hopefully I got it everywhere. So that was one big one, so that the planning commission's aware, we are using the planning director. I then, maybe we just want to scroll down, Alicia.
Ask a quick question.
Sure.
So I'm confused by the sentence that was added there. So we're designated as the administrative land use authority for preliminary approval of all subdivision applications. Check. But, and may not be the land use authority for final approval. Does that mean that that's why Thomas is gonna be the final approval?
I'll let Jay
Yes,
answer.
we can clean up the language on that if that's confusing. But
It says one thing and then it says another, so I was confused as to which it was.
have a period.
so you are the administrative land use authority for preliminary, but
Got it.
you cannot be for final approval. So preliminary approval, or maybe I think the suggestion that I think I heard of making that a period instead of a comma, saying, the planning commission may not be the land use authority for final approval or approval of final subdivision applications. It's a little because we're requiring everything up front. It doesn't make sense to have a separate final application, which is why I said final approval. Whereas, it is the preliminary process that you're in charge of. You're the final say on that. And then it goes to final, and all final is it ready to sign? Is this what the planning commission approved? That kind of final check that Thomas will make sure. And my understanding is then that Thomas would also be in charge of collecting all the required signatures and taking it through to that recording process.
And Jay, just so I'm clear, that's because the state code only allows the planning commission to review it the one time, and we're having them review it at preliminary because that is at the time we have the most robust submittal set of submittal materials. Is that right?
That's almost entirely correct. The planning commission can only review at preliminary.
Okay.
So they cannot be the final approval. So by front loading, all the work is done at preliminary. So the planning commission will see all the substantive work, but they can't be the ones that actually sign it and say this is final, done. That has to be another person, but that is minuscule compared to the preliminary in this setup.
Thank you.
Okay,
So Alicia, you're kind of in control of the document, I think.
yeah. And
me to-
Alicia, I think the page numbers are the same. So if I direct you to page numbers, are you able to easily go to that? It's at the top of each page. So in that page 2, one of the changes, just to refresh, is just specifying that there is a separate appeal process for those appeals of the technical nature of those subdivision improvement plans. That can't be the administrative law judge. That's the only reason that Title III is in here, is to clarify that appeal process and those powers. And then we wanted some of the protections for the town to be built into timelines on page 3, so that if the applicant doesn't do anything, or if they don't move quick enough, there are certain things that trigger kind of restarts or expirations, things like that. So, we cleaned up some of that language automatically instead of shall. Shall is usually an obligation word put on somebody to do something, whereas automatically that means no action happens. It just does. And then, clarifying the role of the building official in those contexts there.
I'm gonna jump in here because I made these changes and I don't know why. Just so you know, Jay, there's something with this track changes here where it didn't distinguish me and anyway, or even for the comments. I thought that by putting in comments, I could find all the stuff I did, but it just says author.
Oh,
But in any case, I changed this language slightly so that before it said 1 year, but the IBC, the International Building Code, basically says that a building permit expires if construction has not begun within 180 days. So I put that in there, and then I also put in that that's the same. It also expires automatically if there's inactivity for more than 180 days. That's also very typical. And I cut and paste basically from the IBC that says that the building official is authorized to grant extensions for periods not more than 180 days each. And the request has to be in writing and justifiable cause demonstrated. So I just matched the International Building Code there. That's all I had on this one.
thanks, Polly. Recognizing we do have some time considerations here, I want to move to some of the bigger items. If we could go to page, let's see, 11, past 11, looking into Title 11, where we get into the meat of those substantive changes that we discussed and incorporated. So there are some, we talk about the appeals again. I'm on page 19. And we talk about the classifications of subdivisions, but largely, where we get to the procedures. So one of the big changes that we had, it was page 23, the fire district review. We talked about how, because the fire district is not a town entity, that the town has any authority to expedite. We didn't want our clock to be running, so we put that on the applicant to provide. And then the only obligation on the town is to cooperate and provide relevant information so that the fire district can do what it needs to. So that was something that came up at the last meeting. We made those changes. And then in the next page, we get into the meat of the concept plan package. Again, the goal here is to comply with what we have to do under the state law, which is if they want to, if an applicant comes in and requests it, we have to give it to them. We have to schedule it within 15 business days. That doesn't mean the meeting has to be within 15 business days. It just means we have to schedule it. There are things that we have to do at that time. And then we want it to be useful for the town and encouraging for the applicant to actually use that process. So not make it so cumbersome that it's basically like doing a full application. That kind of defeats the purpose. So then we have that application package. What kind of has to be in there. Again, once they're in this process, they've opted in, we can set some rules. And that's what we've kind of done in those next couple of sections. And then we get a couple of pages later, page 28, we get into the preliminary application package. And I see here some of those changes that Polly was mentioning about confirming it's the planner, not the administrator. I see one there in that paragraph that we still need to correct. That very top paragraph on that page there, the middle there. But we'll catch that. Not an issue. And then we explain and added some things into the preliminary. Is really it's pretty robust as is. And then we require those subdivision improvement plans in 1106.24. Clarified that it's staff and brought that in. And then we added in the timelines to that preliminary procedure. So you're a couple more pages. The bulk of the changed text comes in at 35. Which is under the heading Preliminary Plan Procedures and Subdivision Improvement Plans. So this is where we talk about the 30 business days, where we talk about the reports that are required, and then if the town staff determining that it's complete, and then submitting review comments within the timeframes prescribed. We did write in that the town can use the additional 10 days. So initial review has to be done within 30 business days, but we allow the town to use the additional 10 days because you have up to 40 days for the plan review if needed. The plan and in talking with others, 30 business days is generally going to be enough to not raise any issues with the timing. But if we need the extra 10 business days, extra 2 weeks, we have that option. We just want to be clear that when we respond, that we are only responding to the 30-day required items, not the 40-day required items. So that's what some of this text on that page is addressing. Polly, did you make any changes to this part?
I have to be able to see, hold on, I can probably tell. I did comments where everything was.
Okay, I don't see any comments on these couple of pages at all. Just the red lines.
Yeah. So, I made one or two, you had a few notes that suggested stuff and I went ahead and changed them by like putting in the greater restrictions prevail.
Yeah, we did that. That was one of the first changes. And then we had the final plat application where we say, yeah, it has to be basically the same things that were already there. It's now just kind of signature ready. But because they were so similar, the only things that are different are going to be the signatures. So we want to have that clarified. So
and The other thing that I changed, just as you're going through those two processes, is I made it clear that a concept plan is required for commercial and plats that aren't exclusively single-family duplex or townhomes.
So I mean that really covers the procedural parts. There is more on the engineering and other related things that are happening kind of behind the scenes. But that's the process, and that's what these state-driven changes drive. That's what they're getting to is the procedures that we have to follow. Again, I emphasize to the town council and you that the policy setting standards and rules are still where they've always been. It is the council creating the boxes. The state just tells us how they go about checking them. So if we can look at more specific changes, I want to be thank you for your time and address any questions that you have. We are hoping for a recommendation of some sort so that the council can consider adoption before the end of the year. The effective date based on your population is December 31st. If you don't have something in place, it defaults to kind of having anything that could be read to conflict with state law would cut against the town at that point. So we do want to get something. We can also address if a recommendation doesn't address everything specifically, we can identify issues for the council or staff to address before final adoption if there are any remaining concerns that we can't address by motion or revisions tonight.
Jay, so just so the council members, we're all clear. Basically, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't, because if we don't make a recommendation to the town council and they vote on something, the state has the authority to authorize a less restrictive policy, correct?
Yeah, basically. So for example, with we would still have to provide just as an example with the concept plan, we would still be stuck with the state law requirement, but we wouldn't be able to add in any of the things that we've considered to guide how that process works. So there's a baseline of, yes, we have to give it to them, but now we can say, all right, if you ask for it, we want you to give us all these things so that it can be productive. And it would just be, we have to give it to them, regardless of what might be better for the town.
And then my other question is, what happens to the projects that are currently in front of us before this is enacted? Do they continue under the old guidelines or the new ones?
The old guidelines, it would be based on their vesting when their complete application was submitted and what was on the books at that time.
Thank you. Or any other members of the commission have questions for Jay? Okay. There being none, at this time, we will open this up for public comment. Anybody in the audience like to make a comment on this? Okay, there being none, is anybody online that would like to make a comment?
And I'll just say that I just sent over ordinance to adopt the exhibit. That would also be forwarded to the town council. So Alicia, you should have that in your inbox. We can make it more robust for the council, but I wanted to just have that formality.
Probably, do you want us to vote on each one separately?
Vote No, I mean, it's just one
I
ordinance,
mean, just, well, we have to make a recommendation for.
right? So you're just
accept
going,
that, and then you wanna make a recommendation for the ordinance also.
no, this is, the exhibit is attached to the ordinance.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, so yeah, the motion might be that the planning commission recommends amending Hideout Municipal Codes Titles 3, 10, and 11 in accordance with this ordinance, we don't have a number yet. Along with the attachment.
At this time, seeing that nobody has raised their hand online, we will close public comment for this. That being said, would anybody on the planning commission like to make a motion?
I move that we recommend the ordinance amending Hideout Municipal Code Titles 3, 10, and 11, including the attachment.
Senate Bill 174 and 476.
Senate Bill 174 and House Bill 476.
Make a recommendation, a positive recommendation.
I make a positive recommendation. Yes, thank you.
Does anybody second that?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you, Donna. I will take a vote. Rachel,
Yes.
Joel,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes,
Glynis,
No,
and Tony's no. So it'll pass 3-2 with a positive recommendation to go to the town council next month.
And can I just ask, is it just that you don't, can you have a little more discussion as to why you're not voting for it so that we can be responsive to concerns?
My personal opinion is I think this is just a grand overreach by the state. In for the developers.
I think the town council should have the last say.
Okay, thank you.
And that being said, the next item on the agenda. Consideration of a proposal for conditional use permit from Rocky Mountain Power regarding the wildfire mitigation project, which would rebuild the existing transmission lines. Thomas, be my guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will walk you through this pretty quickly, given our timelines tonight. So Rocky Mountain Power is planning to rebuild a portion of the existing 5.8 mile transmission line, of which approximately 3.5 miles go through the town of Hideout. As a result of being in the mountain zone, they are required a conditional use permit and a conditional use allowance, I should say. In Utah, a conditional use allowance is an allowed use where reasonable conditions can be proposed to mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of a proposed use as defined in the town's code ordinance and the state code. So as we walk through this tonight, the allowed conditions, sets of conditions are defined by our town code and the state. So everybody's aware, Rocky Mountain Power has approximately it's generally about a 40-foot easement. It varies in some areas through town. That easement is where the existing overhead lines are located. It is within that existing easement that the new overhead lines will be located. The number of new poles will be 42. Essentially, they're converting from wood to Core-10 steel. You can go to the next page, Alicia. There is a map down there. You can go to the map, Alicia. That might help a little bit. You can see there that outlines the easement, that outlines the each pole location that will be replaced. Certainly going to Core-10 should help mitigate issues as a result of wildfire and provide taller poles and better service. It's worth noting that there was some public outreach on September 12th, 2024. The town coordinated with Rocky Mountain Power, held an open house in the town council chambers. It was well attended. They had a lot of great information. They presented information and had significant question and answer opportunities. If you aren't familiar with poles, right above that map, I kind of outline the poles carry transmission lines and distribution lines. The top lines on the poles are the transmission lines. Those lines will stay. Those wires will stay. The bottom lines that if you actually look really closely at some of the lines that run through the community, you'll see, maybe 10, 12 feet down is another set of lines. That is the distribution line. Those lines are being removed. So those will go underground. They're currently in the process of putting those underground in the town's public right of way. So that will be undergrounded. That will give a little bit more space between the ground and the upper transmission lines. Can go to maybe the next page, Alicia. That just gives an image of what the new Core 10 poles will look like. They're kind of a darkish color. If you've been to Snyderville Basin through Park City down 224, you've seen those poles. Those were the poles that were put up last year or the year before, I believe it was. So these will be very similar. If you go to the next page, this is an outline, a table that shows all 42 poles, existing heights as wooden poles, and then proposed heights as Core 10 poles. You'll see on the right-hand side, the pole heights increase anywhere from, there was one that went down 5 feet, pole number 80, but most of them are going up about 5 to 15 feet, give or take. It looks like pole number 44 and 72 are going up 22.5 feet, and 78, pole number 78. So they're all, for the most part, they're almost all increasing in height. Again, this has to do with safety and wildfire issues, as well as transmission needs. You could go to the next page, Alicia. Actually, Alicia, or let me check. Is Andy on? Andy Badger with Rocky Mountain Power? Let's see.
I don't see him.
Okay, he's not on yet. Oh, here he is. He's just coming in. We had a few questions that we wanted to make sure that we asked Andy, and let me see when he comes in, because we're at those questions right now. Andy, can you hear us?
Hi, Thomas. I'm on the line. Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Andy, are you able to see the visuals or no?
I'm not. No, unfortunately, I had a call in.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We just had a couple of questions. Alicia, if you could go to the next page. Will all of the single poles be replaced with like single poles? Because we have some poles down on Vantage Lane where we have a single wooden pole that's got maybe 3 horizontal structures at the very top. We also have some, they may be Core 10 or wooden poles, but they have, and maybe a series of 5 and 6 horizontal structures. Will those all be replaced with a similar Core 10 single pole?
Yes. Yeah. The structures that will be replaced, I included a kind of a schematic diagram in the permit application that kind of gives an overview of what it looks like, but all of them will be similar. Yes.
And the double poles that we have kind of on the south end of town that go into Tuhey, will those be replaced with a double pole, or will those also be a single pole?
Without knowing the specific structure number, the best way to answer that is the spreadsheet that was included that identifies the poles. It calls out whether they're going to be single pole or a multi-pole structure. And I believe I've got that right here. I can.
Okay, if you pull that up, we'll keep walking through this. I didn't see that. That's probably in the exhibits that are in the package. I just hadn't seen that. If you don't mind going to the next page, Alicia. Andy, I'll get to that exhibit in just a second. But if a pole needs to be accessed from outside of the 40-foot easement, how is that coordinated? Do you have to work directly with that property owner in terms of land disturbance access, et cetera?
Yes, all of our access will be coordinated with the landowners on obtaining the access, and any disturbances will be addressed after the construction work is completed.
Okay, that is, so whether it's in the easement or outside of the easement, the revegetation, et cetera, is the same essentially.
Yeah, any disturbed areas will be mitigated properly.
Okay. Alicia, you can go down to the next page. That image that the planning commissioners are seeing, that blue line indicates areas that may be outside of the easement in some cases, specifically the top one, it looks like. And I just wanted to better understand how that access would be procured. And it sounds like they have to coordinate directly with the property owner. You can go to the next page. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I can provide a little bit more detail on that. We also have the project manager, Brant, on as well that could elaborate as well or correct me. But when the contractor has been brought on, they'll go out and look at the area and determine the best ways to access where the work needs to be done. And we, at that point, once all of that's been identified and established, that'll allow us to know what landowners will need to coordinate with and that. But again, once we get access to where the transmission poles are, we'll definitely try to stay within our right of way to be able to do the work to minimize, crossing areas that don't need to be crossed. Per se, but all of that will be identified once the contractor's brought on board to do the work.
Okay.
And if I could add to that, Andy, I think it's also something to note that they will work with the landowner on how it's best to access these poles. So if it isn't immediately through our right of way, if there is a simpler way to get through their property and it's less impactful, that is worked through with the contractor and the homeowner at that time.
Okay, that's helpful. Because I did see that there were some areas where you may have a more circuitous access route to get to a pole given its topography, et cetera. In terms of the revegetation, if there are trees or larger gamble oak or similar removed, do you guys replace that, or does everything just get replaced with seed?
Brent, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So with that, we can't necessarily replace the trees as it is. So it is our practice to restore the soil back in kind of as close to native as we can as far as grading and stuff like that, back to a natural stance, and then it would just be seed that would be applied at that point.
Why can't you replace the trees? Out of curiosity.
For the majority, we don't want trees growing under the power lines as they become an issue and again, eventually would become part of the problem for potential wildfire issues as they can grow into the lines. And we do have quite a bit of maintenance that goes into clearing trees from lines and stuff like that. So it is kind of best to keep those away from the power lines.
If you guys have to access a pole from outside your easement, again, given topography, you work with the property owner. In that case, you would replace like for like.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So you will replace if it's not underneath the power line.
Yeah, if it's affected, correct. If it's affected on the property that's outside of the easement that we have, yeah.
Alicia, you can go to the next page and I'll walk through the conditional use requirements right there. Right, you can go up a little bit, actually. Why don't I walk through all four of these? So you can see at the very top of the page is there are four conditional use requirements still a little bit higher up at the top of the page. Go the top there. Go a little higher.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So these are the conditional use permit requirements outlined in the code. At the specified location, the use has to be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the general plan. Number two is the use has to be necessary or desirable to provide a service or facility which will contribute to the general well-being of the community and the neighborhood. The use will not, under any circumstances of this particular case, be harmful to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity or injurious to property or improvements in the vicinity. And then four is reasonable conditions can be imposed by the Planning Commission, which will mitigate the proposed use's detrimental effects. And I think what I would recommend is going to the very last page where I actually outline the conditions in a summarized fashion. So I walked through the general plan here. I'm happy to circle back to this just in the interest of time. I thought it might be easier to look at the conditions that are recommended on the very last page, right above the recommendation, Alicia. You're going the right way. Keep going.
Up like this?
Nope, the other way,
Okay.
toward the last page. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I
And-
should have reviewed this before.
Nope, that's okay. So these are the recommended conditions, that none of the new poles may be located more than 5 feet from the pole they are intended to replace. This applies to single pole structures as well as each individual pole if it's associated with a dual pole or tripole structure. To ensure that this requirement is adhered to, the applicant shall contact the town planner no less than 72 hours before each of the first 5 poles are replaced, so the town staff and or officials may be on site to observe the work to ensure that indeed what was being proposed is being adhered to. That all construction sites and access routes associated with the pole replacement shall be revegetated with like vegetation. It sounds like that is only outside of the easement. And in the case of damage to or removal of a tree such as gamble oak, aspen, evergreens, etc., that it is replaced with a tree that is at least 1.5 inch caliper or 4 feet for an evergreen. That we will probably have to modify that condition given that this will only be for access easements outside of the pole easement. Number 4, all boulders and rocks that are removed for construction shall be put back in a scattered or natural pattern, similar to the way they existed prior to disturbance. Number 5, this one will need to be reworded. Andy and I talked a little bit about this, and we, hang on, we need to reword this because they cannot provide us an easement for the trails and paths. They're willing to allow us to use it, but they don't own the land. They have an easement on the land, so they can't provide an easement. So for number 5, I would recommend that it read that Rocky Mountain Power will coordinate with the town of Hideout and its nonprofit partners to use a minimum 10-foot wide area for public walking, hiking, and or biking trails along the 3.5 mile stretch of utility lines through the town. The agreement shall allow for the construction of soft or hard / paved trails. And Andy, does that generally make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. The only other thing that may be worthwhile to include is to coordinate with the actual landowner as well, just for approval if the town sees that necessary. But again, we're more than willing to work with you and partner with the town as you've outlined.
Okay. And that number 6 was that Rocky Mountain Power will provide an analysis of the electromagnetic emissions from utility lines, the EMFs pre and post construction to ensure there's no significant variation. And those were the 6 conditions that were recommended. I am open to answer questions and or clarify anything if you want, but it also is, again, noteworthy that both Andy and Brant are on this call to answer questions.
Anybody on the commission have any questions?
Straightforward.
Just, I was just wondering how, I mean, I may be naive to this, but how do these poles uh, really is called a wildfire mitigation project? So they're larger, taller, metal. Is this part of a statewide plan, Summit County plan, Wasatch? Like, it just sounds like, I mean, is this something his Mountain Power, how did it all come to be? That this Rocky Mountain decided just to, replace the poles?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it is a state mandate that was passed, House Bill. I forget the number, but it was passed back in 2020, requiring that we develop a wildfire mitigation plan, and working with the state of Utah on that. So the reason why we're going through and rebuilding this particular transmission line, what it does is it removes the distribution underbuild from the poles. And what that does is that increases the ground clearance where the distribution lines were. And then by putting taller structures in, also creates a greater ground clearance for the transmission line, which helps to strengthen the grid and should, it creates better resiliency as well on the transmission line. And should a wildfire occur, hopefully it doesn't. Obviously, the steel poles help to mitigate the wildfire, and they won't burn, which could, have structures fall and collapse, which brings the transmission line to the ground, which isn't a good thing. So these are steps that we're proactively taking and to comply with a mandate from the state of Utah.
What about the other lines that go through Hideout, lines that are closer to 248? Is that a future project to replace those as well? Because those are just as close or closer in some instances than the lines that are being, or than the poles that are being replaced now.
Yeah, so there's definitely, our wildfire plan has gone through and identified high fire consequence areas, and the town of Hideout is categorized as that. And so going through, what we're doing is going through all of our service territory and identifying and prioritizing the lines all the way from distribution all the way up to long haul transmission lines to see what needs to be done. And so it's a rather big undertaking. And so to answer that question is every line is being identified and analyzed, and the one next to 248, there is criteria to where once a line is identified, if it's a cross-country line and there's no, meaning it's not adjacent to a road or a fire break area, there are circumstances where it could remain above ground. But that line in question along 248 isn't identified as part of this project, but it will be looked at and evaluated, and decisions will be made going forward. But for this project, it's not a part of it. Is that right, Brent?
Yeah, let me get on mute. Yes, that's exactly right. It's not a part of this project, but it is part of the assessment from the committee on these wildfire projects. So they do go through and kind of prioritize impact on the community and how old some of the poles and structures and line is, and then prioritize accordingly as they kind of lay out these projects. But as Andy had mentioned, it's for the entire state of Utah. There are no shortage of fire high consequence areas, and we were trying to prioritize accordingly.
Thank you.
I assume, I understand why you would want them a little bit taller for wildfire purposes, but what about high winds? Is that an issue, or are these,
Windproof.
yeah, strong enough to
Yeah.
withstand high winds.
Hurricane proof.
Yeah,
Yeah, hurricane proof would be nice. I don't know if we're quite there yet. But the engineering that takes place on the transmission lines does factor in wind as well as one of the criterias. And what can happen is, depending on how strong the wind is, that could create what's called galloping or swinging of the lines. And there are spacers that can be put in if the engineer feels like it's needed. But when the engineering is done on the line, all of that is factored in and accounted for.
thanks.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Okay, there being none, we will now open this up for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to ask a question or make a comment? Okay, there being a no? Oh, excuse me.
Well,
Step up to,
question, yeah.
up to the podium, sir. State your name and address, please.
Jim Lapicola, 11758 North Stargazer. We're in Lakeview Estates. So one, curious, why aren't they burying the transmission lines? And then two, these look like higher profile poles than the existing wood poles. Obviously, I saw one of the sections of the presentation talks about one of the goals is preserving view. So one of the reasons we all probably bought our property is the view. And so we are very concerned that, and we're looking at our sight line right now, if you take the existing poles where they are now, make them bigger like these appear to be, and then take them up however many feet, that's going to directly impact our view and therefore our property value, you would think. And so we bought our house based on the views as they were when we purchased, not based on, we had no information about this at the time. So I want to understand how these are going to impact our views, but interested why they can't bury the transmission lines as well.
Yeah, no, so that's a great question. And the first one regarding the burial of transmission lines. Yes, a transmission line can be buried. However, the order of magnitude for the cost is significant. And with Rocky Mountain Power being a regulated utility, for the town of Hideout to request a line to be buried, if Rocky Mountain Power was to incur that cost, it would have to roll that cost out to all of the rate base, meaning that communities wouldn't be able to benefit from that particular line being placed underground. Now, that being said, if Hideout is interested in burying that line, it can be done. And I've actually had conversations, and forgive me, I forget the name of the developer, but we had looked at, it was, I believe it might have even been Tuahe, where we were looking at a segment of line, and it was right around 2,500, 2,000 feet. And then when you put in the two dip poles on either end, just for that segment of line, a rough cost would be between $6 and $7 million for that particular span length. So the cost, the order of magnitude to underground all the way through Hideout would be substantial. But again, if that's something that Hideout and the community is interested in, we could definitely look at that. But this project would need to proceed because we have everything procured, all the material procured, and we're ready to do the rebuild. In regards to the visual question, obviously we can't really well, let me back up. We've tried to minimize the impact by doing a pole for pole replacement. and the poles will look similar to what's already there. They're not going to be substantially wider, although they will be taller. But to help mitigate that, we're going with Core 10 self-weathering, meaning that they'll be a brown or a rust color to try and blend in a little bit better. Obviously, you can't totally eliminate the view, but we've tried to take steps that will help minimize the impact. But to your point, they will be taller, but that's the requirements that we need to adhere to better. We'd rather have taller poles than have a possibility of a wildfire occur. So we're trying to do our part to be good stewards and ensure to minimize any negative impacts like a wildfire occur, and taking this approach by the taller structures will help do that.
Maybe you can be there the day they put the pole in and make them so that the 5 foot extends.
Yeah. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Do I have to go to the podium? No. Have we looked at alternative financing options if we did want to bury the lines? You know, it'd be nice to understand what the cost is and then what are the financing options for that?
As he stated, it was like close to $6 million for 2,500 feet to go through the town of Hideout. You're talking miles.
Mm-hmm.
So
For 25, how much?
6 million.
For 2,500 feet?
That's
Yes.
what he said.
About $40 million for 3.5 miles.
Oh my God. Okay, forget that.
Well, so you need to keep in mind too, with the transmission to underground a transmission line, we're talking the order of magnitude of 46,000 volts being placed underground. So that would require trenching, putting in concrete conduits and vault boxes. And these vault boxes that are installed, to put it into perspective, that like a Connex box, the vault boxes are very similar to that for a transmission line, meaning that's where connections are made to the conductors when it's placed underground. And the other point to make is if a fault occurs, if a line goes out or a phase goes out on that, being able to restore the power there is also prolonged, because the linemen have to go into the vaults, start troubleshooting the areas where it is, whereas when it's overhead, finding the fault location and being able to restore power is a lot more is quicker to do than when it is underground. So the biggest benefit you get by undergrounding a transmission line is you gain the visual, you get the visual back that, you know, Hideout has. However, there are some ramifications that, you know, outages occur, the prolonged time frame of being out of power. And if it's, you know, during the winter time, that could be problematic with how cold it gets and that. So there are pros and cons to it, but the order of magnitude for construction is part of the reason why it costs so much money.
I do have a question for you in regards to, now you're allowed to be within 5 feet of the existing pole. What happens if for some reason you cannot do it within that 5 feet?
I can take that one, Andy. So we have walked these lines, we have assessed these poles. We don't foresee any issue with that 5-foot barrier. So the good thing about that 5-foot barrier, it's in any direction, right? Still within, as long as it's still within our easement. And with that in mind, we're able to replace those within that. Our goal is honestly to put it as close to the existing pole as possible. And we haven't ran into any issues on these poles.
Do we have access to these documents, by the way?
Yes.
It's on the town website.
It is.
Does anybody who is online have any questions?
There was a question in the chat from David. Do you wanna talk about that right now, David?
Yeah, this is Dave Chihuahua. I sent the note in, you know, so we, like Jim, bought on Stargazer because the view was acceptable to us. Raising these, I've seen these metal poles, you know, around the community, well, around, you know, the Park City community, and they are definitely more obtrusive, you know, than a small wooden pole. I believe that it could negatively impact our view, thus negatively impact our property values. And having said that, you know, we have 60 homes going in. They're going to have huge transmission lines going, you know, through them now that will impact those 60 homes. And when you take and perhaps more, you know, down the line, but at least ours. And you know, if you take a subset of homes in the Hideout, you know, that is that great, the 60 homes that are going in now, and negatively impact the property value, then the comps for the entire Hideout could be impacted. You know, I mean, I just don't think that that this is a welcome thing for our community in particular, our section of the community.
You realize this has been mandated by the state. It's not something that they dreamed up as a whim.
It's mandated by the state and they dreamed up as a win.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
All right.
and
Well,
could I also add to that a little bit? It is an existing line. That line has been in place for decades. And if we were looking to seek a conditional use permit for a new transmission line alignment, I could definitely dive into that conversation and you know, please know I understand what you're saying, but with it being an existing line with existing rights to be able to maintain the line, there's not much that we can do. We can't relocate the line because it's an existing line. So that's why we've scoped the project the way it has been scoped. Be able to satisfy,
I mean, you're
wildfire.
Next to an airport.
No, I get it. It's just that you're obstructing the view of brand new homeowners that didn't see this coming. It's arguably one of the best views, maybe the best view in all of Utah, in my assessment. Like looking across the lake at the mountains, it's why we moved here, and it's why people will continue to move there. You just made it a lot less appealing to some of the homes.
Sounds like it's done.
I guess the one question would be, do you actually have to increase the height? Because if you didn't increase the height and kept, you know, the height the same and just changed the pole out, that would be acceptable to most, because we made our buying decision knowing that the poles are where they are at the height they're at. So that's really the bigger issue. It'd be more acceptable if you kept the height where it is now.
I think the question, is why are some poles going up, increasing by 40% in
Yeah.
height, and others are decreasing by 10%?
And number 78.
What's the
22
reasoning?
feet.
I guess, what's the reasoning for that, other than just a blanket, you know, wildfire mitigation? I understand the higher the pole, the less chance of a wildfire hitting a transmission line, but why the big differences in the specific respective poles? Heights.
So
heights.
go ahead, Brent.
That wasn't me, but I can take that if you want. So it takes into account the topography. If we went through these pole by pole, it'd make a little more sense visually. Clearance, if there's a very steep grade near these, keeping and maintaining that clearance that is determined and needed for the wildfire mitigation portion of this is the important part, as well as taking into account the stress on these poles and what they need to be to maintain the transmission lines and that weight And again, the wind that comes and pulls on them, that's all calculated into these height increase. And to also reach the standard which has been implemented for this mandate on what is acceptable for wildfire mitigation.
On you.
And do you guys know approximate age of this line? Of the pole, you know, approximate
What
age
is
of
it, decades?
decades?
Is it, yeah? How,
Do you guys know?
Give
Brent,
me
you know
give me a
that
minute.
off-
I can pull it up on my document here shortly, unless you have it, Andy.
15 years, or if it's,
It,
I know it's
I believe it's close to 50 years on this
50,
line.
50.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, but let me confirm that, and because I know heading towards Camas, there's been some replacements there recently, but let me confirm what this line is. Unless Andy, you have any insight.
I don't have that in front of me, no.
Andy, a quick question somebody had asked me while he's looking that up is, does the proposed plan, the poles, include adding redundancy? Is that a part of this project?
So this is a transmission line originating at the Silver Creek substation and traveling towards Camas. So we're just rebuilding this particular line. Any redundancy would come at another time. But again, yeah. So it's just rebuilding this single transmission line in place, and it doesn't include adding any additional redundancy.
Okay, so it's just the single. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to note, again, I'm still trying to get all the details, but some of these structures are upwards of 69 years old on this transmission line.
59?
69. Yes,
69.
but yes, and that's not all of them. There have been replacements throughout, but there are some upwards of that age.
Good, folks, we've come up against time constraints for this project. So we're gonna have to, Alicia, Thomas, are you asking us to give a recommendation on this tonight?
Just to be clear, the answer is we're not asking for a recommendation. Your vote is the final vote. Planning Commission is the final vote for all conditional use permits. So it would be a vote to approve, deny, approve with conditions, deny with reasons, and or continue if there were outstanding pieces of information that you felt were necessary.
I mean, we need to close public hearing, so.
Yes. Okay, at this time, the public hearing will be closed. Thank you. Does any of the members on the commission have any issues or questions that they would like resolved, or are you okay with going forward and voting on this? Rachel?
I know they had meetings, I kind of think they still might need to explain in more detail to the public exactly what's going on, because.
There was a public meeting.
Yeah, I know, I still don't feel like everybody thoroughly understands. But, I don't know if that's something that, just something more explanatory could be sent to the homeowners. And also, I guess.
They could have also come to the meeting, the open house.
Will the homeowners be notified when the ones that are around the house is being worked on? Yeah. So something.
Thomas, is there a notification process for the owners that are involved when the poles are near the house?
There is not a formal notification process. My understanding, and Andy or Brent, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you're operating the easement and you're accessing through the easement only, that the property owners would not be notified. Only if you have to access outside of the 40-foot-ish easement for Rocky Mountain Power, if you have to access outside of that, then it's my understanding you would have to coordinate and get approval from the property owner. Is that correct?
Is that correct, Brant?
Yes. So, but to be honest, we do require kind of our contractors, if they're in the area, they do notify the homeowners of, especially if there's any impact, equipment coming into the area, stuff like that. We do want to be good stewards while we're there, and we do kind of reach out, as ahead of us going into certain areas.
Maybe it would be a good idea to have this on a website with, you know, when the project starts, we're starting with pole number 44 and then when, you know, give a
Projected
notice
timeframe.
of when 43 or 47's coming and when 50's coming and.
Also,
That might
will we
be-
have any power outages?
Good question.
I can, rarely.
I mean, when they're working
When
on
they're
doing
doing
the
it.
power be down.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, will there be any power outages while this work's being conducted?
There will be minimal power outages, mostly when it's just transferring over from going from the overhead to the underground. It is very minimal in this case.
And if we don't,
Define minimal, please.
yeah,
So when they do the transfer over, again, it could take an hour, it could take 3 hours, depending how smooth the transition goes from overhead to underground. But with us, the power is live on the transmission poles now, serving each property. We will do all the underground work and install the conduit, the vaults, everything needed. And then we do an outage to transfer from the overhead lines to the underground grid. At that point, there would be an outage, but it would be a minimal.
So that's just
And
one.
notification would go out. Yeah.
So that's just one outage, correct? It's not like
Correct.
lot per pole or anything like that.
Correct. And if we run into any issues, there may be something where they'd have to divert it back up, do their testing and divert it back down. So again, I say minimal because it could be 1, 2, just a handful for a short amount of time. But again, all that notification will go out to the homeowners prior to that, when they can expect the outage, for how long, and what, I guess, what individuals can expect and who will impact.
How does the notification process work? Is that by email to customers?
Yes, so mostly it's notified. I don't know if anybody has signed up for the notifications through through Rocky Mountain Power's portal online. So where you can pay your bills, anything like that, you can sign up for alerts. It would notify anything that impacts you, or the surrounding area. We will also do any reaching out, like door knockers or anything from the contractor that will be doing this work, notifying of the outage that will be incurred.
Is there a projected start date?
There is. We would like to start, again, not knowing exactly which poll we would start at this point, because we're assuming right now approval through your community. We're working with other communities as well. So when this would impact your community, we don't have that schedule built out, but we would like to start this project, the transmission project and distribution project, in the spring of next year.
and what would happen if we did not approve this?
Good question.
And Andy, I'll let you take that one.
So to be honest, it's not a pleasant experience, because we do have, going back, as I said earlier, it is an existing line. We are within our rights to operate and maintain that line, and should it come to that, which I sincerely hope it doesn't, but should it come to that, we do have avenues where we could go before the facility siting board, and then that triggers a legal component, and it's a drawn out process. But having the existing line, having the need to do the changes that we need to do, there are paths that we can pursue, but again, it's not a pleasant path to go down. But as Brent said, we are working with Summit County and Wasatch County. We have gotten the conditional use permits from those communities. We try to be good stewards. We do our best to work with the communities along the way. Some of the things we've done, like in Park City, we just finished up a huge distribution underground there, where we had meetings frequently with the city, just, with their water department, with their engineers, coordinating with the work that would be done, what roads would be impacted, just being as transparent as we can. And if that's something that Hideout would like to do, we would be more than happy to set those up next spring, and just coordinate with the town along the way, as much as the community sees fit. So we're here to do what we can on our part and accommodate the needs that Hideout has. So yeah.
Thank you.
Can I also jump in from a legal perspective and just remind you of what the standard is? State code made conditional use permits. It's defined by state code, and the standard is that they are allowed uses so long as their impacts can be reasonably mitigated. I'm just trying to find the exact language, but we need to abide by that state code standard.
Thank you, Robert. Do any of the commissioners have any objection to voting on this then?
I think you kind of have to.
There being no objection, would somebody like to make a motion?
Could I just jump in real quickly, Mr. Chairman, because the 6 conditions that are outlined on that last page, I want to clarify some corrections to 2 of them. And I don't know if the planning commissioners are comfortable if you feel that there are additional conditions that are necessary to mitigate any impacts. If there are, we can add those. But if I could clarify condition number 3 on that last page, I think based on what we heard tonight, that should be rewritten to say, and I'll forward this to you, Alicia, all construction sites and access routes associated with pole replacement located outside of the existing RMP easement, Rocky Mountain Power easement, that cause damage to existing landscaping must be replaced with like in coordination with the affected property owner. And then the number 5 would be replaced with Rocky Mountain Power will coordinate with the town of Hideout and its nonprofit partners to use a minimum 10-foot wide area for public walking, hiking, and/or biking trails along the 3.5-mile stretch of utility lines through the town. The agreement shall allow for the construction of soft or hard paved trails. So we took out that the request for an easement because they cannot offer an easement for that. Again, if you guys are ready to vote this evening, those are the
Thomas,
6.
can we add that they provide a proposed timeline for the work?
We can
Relatable
require that.
as the project progresses. Just so we're prepared.
Are you thinking maybe kind of project updates? Is that kind of what you're getting at? So we know where the project is at certain times?
So we know that like they're gonna start with hole 44 and then kind of go down the line and let us know when hole 44 is done. And then we know that 45 is next, or, just so that people can tune in and see when their pole is gonna be replaced.
Andy, is that something that you would be prepared to incorporate as a condition now? Is that something that you and I would need to work through if they continue this to the next meeting to add those conditions? I don't know exactly what degree of specificity you have in terms of that information.
Yeah, so it's been my experience when it comes to conditions on a permit, typically anything requiring coordination, we're here to work through that. To put it on a condition as part of a condition, it makes it, I don't want to use the word challenge, but it's just something that we haven't encountered before. And again, just to reiterate, we are actively working with all of the communities that we're currently working in throughout Summit County and throughout Wasatch County. And any coordination efforts that the city would like to see, we're more than willing to do that. We also have a wildfire website on our on RockyMountainPower.net that we could provide updates to as part of this project, along with sending any project updates or even schedules once they get developed. We could send them Hideout to post to their website as well. We're more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
Do you have an estimate of how much time this whole project would take?
Are we speaking about just the work in the Hideout community or for the entirety of the
Yes.
project?
In Hideout.
Hideout, I haven't broken that down. If we were talking 4 miles, the process in which we rebuild these is we'd come in with the civil work to get access to the poles. We would drill the holes, place the poles, and we would do that for the majority of the poles. Then we would come back, place any of the components, string the wire, and then we would pull it into place and then do our restoration on our way out. So we're in areas multiple times to complete this project. So overall, I'd say for Hideout, we'd be probably looking 2 to 3 months for completion from beginning to end, right? Into full restoration.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll move.
Yes, we need to vote on this, but we're.
I'll move that we.
Sorry, I thought you were gonna ask another question.
I'll move that we have positive recommendation for the conditional use permit from Rocky Mountain Power with the clarifications to 3 and 5 suggested by Thomas.
And if I could just clarify that, it would not be a positive recommendation. You guys would vote to approve the condition with those conditions as amended. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody want to second that?
Yes, I'll second
All
it.
right, we'll take a vote. Rachel,
Yes.
Joel,
Yes.
Donna,
Reluctantly, yes.
Glynis,
Yes.
and Tony's a yes. Therefore, we approve the proposal for the application. Okay, next item on the agenda. Discussion and possible recommendation to the town council regarding a zoning map change to rezone a parcel for the wild horse development from Mountain M to neighborhood mixed use. Okay. Thomas? Sure, stage is
Great,
yours.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will work through this one as quickly as possible as well. You guys have seen this one before, and so I will be pretty brief in my presentation. This is for the Wild Horse Provision Project up between Claim and the Bill Wolf property. The last time you saw this, since the last time you saw this, the design for the project has changed. What you saw at the meeting prior, which I think was back now in September, were the taller buildings with the steeply pitched roofs. Since that meeting, the applicants have realized that there's a height restrictive easement on that property that disallows anything higher than 20 feet on that property. I think that was put into effect in 1991. And so what they have done is they're coming back to you for a new proposal in terms of design, slightly larger footprint, because these would be not a little bit smaller, and there's a bigger patio area. The proposed uses would remain the same. Alicia, you could go down to, we can skip some of that. Why don't we go down to the first concept plan image, and I can kind of walk through this a little bit. Keep going to the next page. and the next one, I'm sorry. So with this new plan, it necessitates the greater use of retaining walls. And so you can see this is a view from SR 248 into the property. You could see that the height of the buildings have come down significantly. They don't exceed 20 feet. You can see that the area does require some additional retainage walls along the front. And if you can see to the right side of that image, or I'm sorry, the left side of the image, you could see that there is also some larger retaining walls in the back. And I think that the applicants and the architects are going to be able to speak to that tonight, what the size and scale of some of those retaining walls are, because we've outlined that in the staff report. And I know that you guys have had some concerns about that in the past. Alicia, why don't you go down to the next page? And you can see, again, that's the retaining walls that would be on the entry up the Gray Wolf Road. There you can see kind of a view from the patio. You can go down to the next one. Another view from the patio. I think that one is looking south. But why don't you go to the next page, and I'll walk through some of the issues associated with this design that I think would be worthy of discussion tonight. So the Hideout Code, the sensitive land ordinance, does not allow development on slopes greater than 30% for residential or commercial development. Much of this site is greater than 30%. So if this is something that the Planning Commission were to positively recommend as far as a concept plan and then rezoning and master development agreement, we would need to make sure that we understand exactly which portions of the site are greater than 30%, because in effect, that would be a variance otherwise that that they would have to pursue with an administrative law judge. So that would have to be incorporated into the MDA. Did you need something, Polly? Did you want to say
Yeah, I
something?
was just gonna jump in just to say, I mean, what's being presented tonight is a work session. This isn't complete. Because we don't have those, there's still quite a few things that are needed for the package. And so there's not going to be any kind of vote or recommendation. It's more just a head nod and to get the reaction of the Planning Commission. You guys aren't voting on anything tonight or, giving recommendation or anything.
Yeah, to that point, I'm just outlining some of the specific code areas so that you know what would otherwise be a variance if this were to be approved. The setbacks are also have been decreased. The setback for the property line fronting SR 248 is essentially 0, because the patio, which is part of the overall structure, would extend all the way out. So instead of being 50-foot setback, which is the requirement in the community for neighborhood mixed-use commercial, instead of 50 feet from that property line, that right-of-way line, it would be 0 feet as proposed. It's noteworthy, we have not yet had Gordon look at the project yet from a town engineering perspective, stormwater perspective, et cetera. That is something that we would propose if you essentially give a heads up or a thumbs up for the proposed concept design. If you go down to the next page, Alicia, and I'll just, again, I'm going through this quickly, but we'll circle back with the applicants and their architect. You can go down just a little bit further. These are some of the retaining walls proposed. Again, you saw those in the axonometrics, but here you can kind of see that these would exceed the heights allowed pursuant to the current town ordinance. That would be something that you all have to consider. To what extent are you willing to incorporate something like that in a concept plan and then subsequently an MDA?
Thomas, how much are they over?
I think I'll have to let them speak to that because I don't know the exact numbers, but for some reason, I thought they might be 16 to 20 feet. I'm not exactly sure, so don't quote me on that, but I know that Tom Longi is on from Stantec, the architecture firm working on this. He could probably answer that. And in fact, I would say, before we go any further, let's get into these design issues, because I think that nailing these down before next steps is essential. So I think that Tom Longi is on from Stan Tech, the architect, Jerry Krylan is on. He's the development advisor for Tim and Diane Schoen, who are the applicants, and I think that they are both on as well. So you have everybody at your disposal should you have any specific questions. I don't know if Tim or Diane or Tom or Jerry, or I think Kurt is on as well from Stan Tech. If you guys have any information you want to present to the commissioners, or if Mr. Chairman, you guys want to jump into question and answer.
I would take a second, Thomas. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Again, thank you for looking at this project. We've been working on it over 18 months. Since we started the project, we've been working with Thomas, Jan, and our team. Since our last engagement, we took a lot of information back, and we think we've come up with a plan. Clearly, that a lot of extra work to be had, but at the core of this project, it was to create a new development that would achieve the city's vision statement of 2019. I mean, it's that simple. We feel that we're going down that direction, and we're trying to put all those together. And tonight is somewhat of a reflection of all those positive collaborations and hard work to date. And I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Krylan and the team to answer any specific questions on any issues that we're bringing up here.
This is Jerry Krylan. I'm with Development Advisors. As Thomas indicated, consultant on the development to the Schoens. And thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. To just touch on a couple of things here, and then I want to make sure that in the interest of time here, we're sensitive to everybody's time and we dive into the questions at hand that Thomas has brought up here a little bit. And yes, Kurt Baseford and Tom Longy from our architects from Stan Tech are on the line with us as well here. I just would take a moment here to reiterate that in all the efforts that we've been doing here the last year plus or so for this development, our primary focus is to be in compliance with and work in collaboration with the city and achieve its objectives and goals as far as the Hideout's general plan. To that end, we think the three major primary land planning objectives Thomas talked about earlier in this meeting tonight have been addressed, that of creating an inviting neighborhood, that of preserving view planes, etc. I'll take that a step further to suggest that we are bringing commercial space, a relatively minor amount of commercial space, but necessary space. It was one of the things that was brought up in some of the commentaries on last week's town hall meeting or session that the city had on what people's views were on other things going on, having to travel far distance for certain retail type operations or opportunities. We have always thought about bringing this to this location here, and the challenges are, as Thomas mentioned, the topography of this particular site. Installing these retaining walls, I'm going to turn it over to the architects in just a minute, but specifically these retaining walls, as much as we can, are with regards to the constraints put upon us by the site, we're attempting to build them as closely in compliance with the current plan that the city likes to adhere to, the setbacks, the rise of the walls and the setbacks. So they will be stepped, they will be landscaped, they will be, architecturally appealing. We intend to use those for not just its structural purposes, but for, cosmetic appeal of the site and bring people into the commercial space. We have also always strive to meet the goals and objectives of the city in terms of compliance with the current zoning as we could. And when this last application was filed way back in September for an October meeting, our buildings were taller than, and we were asking for a variance to the current zoning height by only 7 feet or so. Since that time, we've become aware of this this easement encroachment or to us on by our neighbor to the north, which is fine, and we have redesigned at substantial cost the buildings to be in compliance with that. None of the buildings, all the buildings have been reduced from initially one building that was single story and another building that was 2 stories now to all one single story building. None of the structures exceeding 200 feet above the existing grade, again, consistent with that easement. So I think the point is that, you know, we want to make this happen. We're going to be residents there, or the Shones are as well, of Hideout. Our intentions are to bring something to the city that is they can be proud of, we can be proud of, and will generate revenue, et cetera, and new residents and constituencies. Cost involved in terms of bringing installation, stormwater management, all the other things related to this type of project, including the residential lots, you know, are on us. Our request is to, we do have, as Thomas pointed out, a couple of variances that we do need to have a agreement and approval on from the city. And they involve first a construction of a secondary roadway access through a parcel of property currently owned by the city to the south. And that variance really is sort of mandated to accommodate a request by the Wasatch County Fire District to have a second means of egress to just having Gray Wolf Road as the main access to the property. So we've accommodated that, and we've found a way to do it if the city is willing to be, you know, collaborative with us and provide us at our cost improvements to a small parcel of adjacent property that they own. The other, only other at this stage variance that we need is flexibility, as Thomas said, on the vertical height dimensioning of the retaining walls. We intend to still, as I said, keep them stepped and landscaped in keeping with, you know, the good stewardship of the intent of the land planning and just the style that the city wants to have going forward. But we do, because of the topography, it is one of those parcels that doesn't fit the 30% prescribed in every aspect. In many areas of the site, it does, but where we're going to position the building, you know, there is a 30% difference in there, and we're prepared to do the rebalancing of the site with cut and fill as we need to, and bring this project forward. With that, and specifically to discuss the retaining walls themselves, if you don't mind, committee, I will turn it over to Kurt Baseford with Stantec Architects to talk a little bit about those walls in particular.
So before you do that,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, is there, I like this design a lot better than the last one.
Okay.
So thank you. But the first one we saw, the buildings were kind of in the hillside. If the buildings that you currently have were more in the hillside, and this last one to the, I guess, west, is that west? All the way over to the left there, if that were all into the hillside, could we get rid of some of the retaining walls? And are there retaining walls also on the backside that we can't see?
Yeah, Kurt, I'm going to let you field that. You've looked closest at the engineer or the planning of this. Before you do that, one thing I would say is, and correct me if I'm wrong as you dive into this, the step backs that are shown in this image right now are as close to complying with the rise and run, if you will, so the vertical and the horizontal as dictated by current zoning plan. You know, we purposely stepped these like this as much as it's more expensive then to at least where it's most visible like this, have them go up 30 feet and then back and then, up again. These are purposely terraced to kind of comply with the imagery that I think the city and planning commission had been contemplating. Kurt?
Yes, thank you, Jerry, and thank you to the chairman and the commission for your time this evening. Regarding the previous design and how that's set into the hillside compared to what you're seeing this evening, is we did have a 2-story concept previously, which pushed over 45 feet. And so that allowed us to gain access from an upper level of the site and a lower, so it just naturally cut into the site quite a bit more. With this concept, keeping all of the 18,000 square feet of a consistent finished floor elevation, most notably to maintain accessibility across the entire development. It stretches the property in the image kind of west to east or true north to south. And so what that does is it does cut us into a higher hillside towards the left of the image, and thus requires more cut and fill. And what we have attempted to do in this study is to find an elevation that balances the cut and fill within the site, and utilizing the 6 and 5 rise and run as per Hideout standards to accomplish that cut fill as well distributed as possible.
So I guess that's a no.
Well, and to your additional question, on the back side of the building, there is a wall that retains some of the site behind the building. However, that wall actually functions as a building on the back of the building. So it actually, that wall touches internal space to that. And then what this does as well is it maintains our parking access at the finished floor elevation as well as parking up above. So we're retaining the parking to the left of the building and the drive lane behind, and the parking at the finished floor elevation, so we can maintain all of our parking count minimums on the private property itself and not extend into other parcels.
And you also want a concession to the 50-foot from the UDOT highway right away, correct?
So
instead of
is the
instead of going up 2 stories, you're going deep and wide, correct?
correct. So the windows that
It
you
may be helpful. I'm sorry, Kurt, or Tom, I forget who's talking. Kurt, it may be helpful, Alicia, if you go to the next page so that they can see it in site plan. It may be the following page, sorry, 2 pages down. That might help as Kurt walks through that a little bit.
There you go.
Sure.
Yeah, the building itself respects the setback line. It's the outdoor plaza, if you will, that's
Alicia,
west of the setback line.
Down a little bit, because what you're showing is the town-owned land.
The other way.
Yeah. Or there you go. That's pretty good there. So you guys, just for to clarify here, this is the SR 248 right-of-way line and the property line. The setback line is right here. Although I think that's showing 25 feet, and technically it's 50 feet. So it would technically be about here. The buildings are set back at 25 feet, but the structure, the patio, etc., is right up on the setback line. So without an MDA, that would require a variance.
Yes, the edge of the patio is with setback 5 feet from the property line, but then the retaining walls terrace down from there.
What's the width of the patio?
The patio provides depth to allow patio seating for a potential food provider, accessible walkway between patios, and then tables along the retaining wall. So the depth. I don't have that number in front of me at this moment.
Yeah, it should be about 20 feet based on the building sitting at 25 feet and the wall at 5 feet off the property.
Thomas, Jerry Krylan, your point of clarification, if you will, the buildings where they begin are at the prescribed setback point. In terms of the, relative to the zoning that we're pursuing, the zoning change to neighborhood mixed use.
I think that
patios,
the
which are not
use has 25 feet setbacks for the frontages, with the exception of SR 248, it has a 50-foot setback for the NMU. So it'd be actually further back here, technically, just for clarification.
well, again, is a constraint with the site, back to the earlier conversation. I think what's maybe important for discussion purposes is that from the edge of the building, yes, there is a roughly 20-foot on average patio there. It's up in the air off of 248, and it still is from the right of way of 248, the center line of 248, 150 feet is to that property, to the right of way, and then 50 feet beyond that. So it's a ways back from the highway itself.
That makes sense. Just for clarification, Jerry or Kurt or Tom, are the retaining walls, are they out in this area?
No.
Are they within the property line here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we don't encroach on the on outside the property lines.
How far?
One of the, sorry, go ahead.
How far, I mean, are we allowed to build the retaining walls that close to 248? Do you know what the setback is for that?
That's what they were talking.
Is that what you were just saying? Okay, I don't even. So the retaining walls are, where you just drew in there to the left of that line?
No, they clarified that all of the retaining walls are at the line.
At the line.
Or inside.
The retaining walls, correct. And then the building patio and buildings themselves are further back.
Up in this section, right up here, Jerry, what is the setback for the patio up there?
Kurt and Tom, I've got to look to you for the specifics.
The setback for the patio would be about 15 feet.
To the patio edge.
Yeah.
So 3 rises of the retaining walls, if assuming each steps back and terraces 5 feet for the code. So that's 15 feet, that's 3 levels, correct?
Correct.
To the edge of the patio, and then to the building. Okay.
So the patio extends beyond the building. Is there a roof over the patio?
Our intent in the design is partial covered, so that it's, in terms of inclement weather or whatever, there is some covering. Also, I think in the design, there can be, and maybe go back to one of those images that we showed, right now, the planned extensions of outside the glass line there are to provide for management of solar gain and shadows and things like that, so that it's not direct sun onto on people or pedestrians on the patio.
Yeah, I think go back to the patio views. There's 2 different views. If you look down the length of it, I think that's a better.
Yeah, there you go. So it's for shading, if you will, but it's not entire. It's not the entire patio.
I guess that last building, there's a couple things that I'm, not sure are what, optimal in that last building. I think if maybe the patio cover came out further, it might abate some of the noise going uphill. And also that little area, can you scroll this way? Yeah. Yeah, the area to the left there where that look all the way to the left, where that retaining wall is. Like there's a gap between the building and the retaining wall and. Yeah. I'm not liking that. Well, like, you know how the wind blows here? Like I can just see just a bunch of trash in there and snow in there and like. Yeah, if right there, if that were right up against the building, I think that would be a little better design.
Yeah, and those are elements we can work through to have that page left wall of the building act as a retaining wall. Then we would probably have another step back or two to get back to the elevation for the upper level parking.
From an engineering standpoint, if the building was a little bit smaller, would it make a difference in the retaining walls? I'm just wondering how you came up with 18,000 square feet and whether we actually needed to be that big.
Well, 18,000 square feet from our standpoint is like close to the minimum size that makes the economics of the project, given all the things that we have to do on the site, as well as looking at it from the standpoint of how do we maintain and make sure that this site is going to be successful. 18,000 square feet is, you know, somewhere between 5 and 7, maybe 8 tenants, and without with many more than that, it gets a little challenging to make sure that the performance, the financial performance of the project will be sustainable. Making it smaller cuts the other way as well, because then the cost of dealing with the site here is gets a little prohibitive relative to what income, what sales tax revenue, anything else like that can be generated will make the economics work. So we've been conservative on the sizing of this so that we install the property, bring commercial to the site, and feel extremely comfortable that it will have a long, sustained performance without, you know, 20% of it or more, whatever, being vacant from time to time because it's too large for the site, right? So that's one thing. I would like to point something else out that is relating to the retaining walls on that left-hand side there in this image. This site requires accommodation to the fire department, as I mentioned earlier, fire district. And as the site elevation changes from right to left, in order to provide a second means of egress, we have to build up a portion of the site on that left-hand side or the north side. The retaining walls there are part and parcel, not simply for the building positioning and all that, but it's for the support of the ground there for the roadway and the parking up there, but mainly the way that we have to install for accommodating another means of egress for the fire district. And we're happy to do that. Retaining walls are a trade-off or a cost impact of that.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add about the retaining walls themselves and the site is that this shows a development without really analyzing cut and fill for the ground. So there's a good chance once civil engineering gets involved, once the zoning change is approved, that some of the retaining wall could be removed with some cut and fill. And the goal would be to not have to remove all of the soils from the site, but to actually fill it in areas that might be extremely low. And then with that, some of the retaining wall could be removed, and the grading of that fill can match the existing contours of the site.
That's a good point, Tom. I'm glad you brought that up. And just to add to it again, we've modified the design of this building so that there's not an issue with the easement that has a restriction on the structures that are put there. And we had a lot less retaining walls and a lot less cut and fill requirements on the prior two-story, upwards of 45 feet higher or so iteration that was presented. But we went back and changed that and to make sure that we're good citizens and that this project can still move forward.
But you still need an easement concession on the right of way for 248 of 50 feet. And you need an easement from the town for additional parking. So I kind of feel like it's just, and I like the concept, I like the idea, but I feel like, again, either you're trying to go too high or too wide for this parcel of land.
Here, Tony, can I just make a statement about some of the legality, or do you want me to wait till later?
No, please do, Polly.
So I just want to comment that, we do have the ability to kind of grant variances in a sense through development agreements. And which is in part why it has to go through planning commission and through city council, because it's almost like you're making a legislative change through the DA, but through the development agreement. But I would say that it's highly discouraged to, when you have a rezone, to have variances from our zone. So, I've talked to other town and city attorneys about this. Most don't allow it at all. I think we've allowed a few very much more minor variances, more little tweaks, than, huge than big ones. So I just want to mention that because I think that you're setting a precedent by allowing it. I think what's a little hard here is that staff got these plans, I think last Saturday. I don't remember the exact date, but we don't, as you can see from the staff report, we don't even have a very good summary of how much they're asking to depart from the zone. So you should consider that and just know that it's highly discouraged. I think generally with the rezone, you're asking for more density or for a separate use. But that should fit within the zone requirements. If not, you should consider creating a new zone or, because otherwise you're kind of undermining your zones. So, I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any other questions? Because we're running up against the allotted time for this project.
I think we've voiced our concerns.
Should we talk about the parking aspect? The land that we own?
Didn't we beat a dead horse on that one already?
Well, I also like the looks of this much better too. Just wish we didn't have to do such severe variances on it. if, especially, being enlightened what Polly had just told us. But I really like the look of this.
If I can add, if I can add to that, I appreciate your comments there. This is Tim Schoen speaking, by the way. Is that, we've been at this, as I mentioned in the upfront, 18 months. We've done a lot of work. We think this does look really well, really good project. As Jerry talked about the economics, there's pressure there. We're also trying to make a statement, a visual statement. So all these things are contemplated in this layout, in this plan. We are looking for resolution because the dollars and the time are mounting up. We'd like to get to some sort of solution quickly, but still, again, meet your objectives, our objectives. And we think this is our best presentation to date. And if we can come to some sort of combination or agreement between the variances that we're requiring, and I think you heard from Tom from Stantec, there certainly is a potential that some of these requests are going to be mitigated by certain civil engineering processes. So I think if we could argue about the setback on 248 or a size of a wall, we think we can address those, but we want to retain the look, the feel, and the size of what we're presenting tonight.
Allow me to add one clarification. There was a question or a comment brought up about the use of the city's parcel for parking. The parking that's shown, parking spaces shown on the city's parcel in the exhibit are not required. We can meet, this plan meets all of the current code parking requirements, the neighborhood commercial on its own within the confines of our property line. Those spaces there are purposely kind of lightly colored and don't show vehicles sitting in them. You see that line or kind of diagonal line running through the upper portion of that red circle. That's the dividing line between our parcel and the city's parcel. Yeah, exactly. The parking spaces to the bottom of the page that are on the city's parcel are not necessary. They're extra if and whenever we needed those. The roadway, that's right. The roadway is really the key part, which is an accommodation. And I think this is spelled out in our MDA and in other transmittals that we had to the city. That's an accommodation to Wasatch Fire. That we have a different further south access entry into the site, providing them a second means in and out in the event that one of the routes was interrupted for some reason during an event where they were trying to fight a fire on the commercial piece. You notice that curved just to the right side of that red circle there. There's an existing road of Gray Wolf Road, and it turns sharply to the right and becomes Minor Road. That's on the claim parcel. We initially intended to do a four-way interchange T right there into our property so as not to have to be on the city's property at all. But fire department requested that we do something different and move that entrance down south onto the city's parcel. So again, just by clarification for the committee's purposes, we only need the use of that site to accommodate Wasatch Fire, and we do not, by the code that's currently planned, need those additional parking spaces. We just showed them on there because commercial, if it's as super successful as we intend it to be and hope it will be, we'll have a lot of activity and a lot of patrons. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will open this up for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience, please stand by the podium, state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
William Wolf, 500 East Highway, 248, Hideout. So, Holly, the attorney, she took out my presentation. It's, they want 50-foot setbacks, get rid of the setbacks. They want to build on 30% slopes, variances. They want retaining wall variances. They, easement, they're trying to shoehorn something in. And I'm a developer and a builder, been for 30 years. I've developed and built in Queens, Staten Island, Brooklyn. I've developed all of them down the East Coast, the West Coast, the Midwest. And we all want to maximize 100% of our property. That's just what developers like to do. But it's not reasonable, it's not feasible, and it's not, as Paul was saying, you set a very big precedence. If you're gonna grant all the variances, like what's the point of a planning and zoning board, you know? Then everyone's gonna want this. But besides that, I feel that there's no compelling reason for this other than, like they said, if it's any smaller, it's not economically feasible. And that's part of the deal. You know, you have to come up with a development or project that makes sense within the confines that you have available to you. And that one of my biggest concerns, besides all that, is that, and Thomas, I really appreciate this report. And it sounds like you put together very quickly and you have all these questions. But I feel that, and Paul, you can look at this too, that the easement is not just a 20-foot height restriction on buildings. The easement actually is no building or structure of any kind be permitted to exceed 20 feet in height from existing grade. And that's a big difference. It's not just a 20-foot building, nothing, no structure. That means parking lots, walls, signs, buildings cannot exceed 20 feet from whatever the existing grade is. So what I'd recommend that as they tune this up and adjust it to meet whatever's required, that they have Stantec, or I'm glad Gordon's on here tonight, that have someone spot check elevations on their proposed structures, including buildings, to the actual grades that are existing. And make sure that that's not, because I feel like from this report, and I think everyone's on that assumption that's just 20-foot building height, but it's not. It's more than that. And so knowing that, I think it's important that it's actually engineered and verified that it's not, you know, out of legal compliance with this easement restriction. So those are my things. I know this is just a working session, and I know there's a lot of work to be done on this. These are my concerns. I said last time I was gonna put together a whole written report for everyone to review, but things are kind of too dynamic right now, so I'm just putting out some points right now. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Is there anybody online that would like to make a comment? Okay, Earl, please state your name and address.
Yeah, my name's Earl Dickerson, and we live at 768 Minor Way. We're actually just right above this. And yeah, it's nice, but they're planning on all this patio space. Has anyone gone there and had a picnic? It's not quiet. My deck is further away from 248 than that. And it's not a quiet place to be. Especially if you want if you want to cut out 25 feet from the freeway to put that patio on. It's noisy. I mean, like I said, my deck is a lot further away than that. And my deck is noisy. We won't stay out on the deck really long. It's really nice on Saturday and Sunday afternoon, but as long as there's trucks going down 248, I mean, occasionally we will get the smell of truck exhaust. We really need a sign up that says not to use engine brakes in the town limits, but everybody does. if they're planning a restaurant, which would be the ideal thing there, but if that restaurant doesn't come in, what will it be? Because, I mean, it seems like a lot of their dining space is going to be noisy, just really noisy. Just wanted to ask if anyone had considered that, if anyone had gone up to that property and had a picnic on it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else online that would like to make a comment? There being no one, we will close the public comment section of this. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or requests that they would like them to work on before they come back?
Would we wanna vote on changing the,
We can't, there's no MDA in place, so there's nothing to vote on.
oh. Got it.
This is just a working
Work session.
working session for this.
Yeah.
Thomas, are you looking to put this over to just December 19th?
I think that would be our recommendation, is that I think that it sounds like you guys have made some recommendations. I don't know if you have anything specific,
I would-
anything in addition specifically you want them to look at. Go ahead, Polly.
And maybe Alicia can jump in on this one, but I would maybe suggest that it gets continued to a date uncertain. And then once we have materials, if they, once they resubmit, that we could renotice it. Just, I'm worrying that we're just pushing everything along. And why not just, it's not that hard to renotice. But Alicia, curious of your.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
And I would say if the planning commissioners have additional recommendations for them to look at in terms of tweaks or size or whatever it is, if you have anything specific, maybe let them know now.
Yeah, Thomas, to follow up on that question, I'd like to ask the question, which variances that we've put forward are absolute no-goes and which are potentially acceptable?
I would like to see you become a little more certain on the height of the walls. You're saying they could potentially be, I mean, potentially, that doesn't guarantee it's getting done.
Tom, the other thing that might help with the walls is if you did maybe a cross section, something like that, because I think you've got the Wolf Gray Road here, and then you've got your road. I think there's a wall in here, but just to understand the walls as it steps down, I think would go a long way. And then that might also help you all understand heights, because we don't understand the heights quite yet.
Anything else from the planning members that they would like to see them work on with Thomas?
No, I think that cross section is a good idea, but the existing, what is existing and then what is intended to occur as far as cut and fill.
Potentially could occur.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Three-dimensional.
Thomas, if I can ask on behalf of the developer and the team, based upon discussions tonight, in a follow-on to Tom's question, Tom Longy's question, would it be possible to have you provide a thorough list of the things that are unclear, needing further clarification? We have provided a couple of section plans in our submittal, and if they're not clear, I'm not arguing that, but what parts of them, what further information are you requiring?
I think that I'll
It'd be
check
helpful.
in for Thomas. I mean, we have certain requirements for concept plan. So, and I'll let him finish up on this, but I don't know that it's the town, you need to evaluate what our code says and, um, meet code or show us where you're not meeting code so that we can evaluate that. I don't think it's fair for our staff to have to go through your code, your submittals and say, well, we don't know, it's kind of up to you to review our code and see what's required. Am I understanding your question correctly?
So that's fair.
And I've incorporated some, Jerry, to that point, I've incorporated some questions for clarification in the report, but I can certainly synthesize that and work with you guys.
Thank you. That would be terrific. Much appreciated.
Yeah, is there somewhere in the ordinance that is more definitive as to the setbacks? Because there is some areas where it's a bit vague. So is that something, Thomas, that you can help clarify for us?
I can absolutely do that. Yeah, it's in Title 12 for the zoning, but I can send you guys those links so that you see them. So you can see the specific setbacks and dimensional area and bulk requirements. I can get that for you.
Okay, because yeah, an example is it says in the grid chart of the setback requirements, 50 feet setback from a highway. So that could be interpreted from the edge of the highway or what you were just saying from the property line.
Right.
That
For us,
huge difference.
It has to be from the property line because we don't have any jurisdiction within the UDOT right of way, and their highway, in theory, could be anywhere within their right of way line, which is why we have it 50 feet from the highway, the right of way, because they, in theory, could utilize any
Build up to that.
or expansions, right?
Okay, yeah, that helps.
Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, would someone like to make a motion to continue this to a date uncertain?
Sure.
Thank
Oh,
you.
sure.
Thank you, Dennis.
I'll make a motion.
Does anybody want to second that? I'll second. Thank you, Joel. Rachel?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes,
Glynis?
Yes,
And Tony's a yes. This one. Thank you, folks.
thank you.
Last item on the agenda, Elkhorn Springs, excuse me. Thomas, I don't know, is it Nate on or does he have somebody else on tonight?
I think Nate is on, and I think his attorney Eric is on, and I think Paul Watson, his engineer, is on. Nate, are you, there you are, I see you. Is that right, Nate?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect, okay.
Thank you for your patience, Nate.
No, thank you looks like you're gonna go over your time limit, so thank you.
What a surprise.
This is called dinner.
right. You want mine?
No.
Thank you.
Nate, my understanding is you're incorporating the other parcel now into this?
Yes, that's right.
Thomas, do you want to go through this or just let Nate run with it?
You know what, given the hour, this is for concept review to provide information and input. Why don't, I don't know if you guys have any questions, or if you prefer I run through it, I could do it very, very quickly, but I want to make sure that, similar to the last one, that we get to kind of design, site planning issues, etc. That is the issue at hand tonight, so that he and Paul have the direction they need. Nate, is there anything you wanted to say?
No, I mean, maybe Thomas run through it real quick, and then I guess I'll start the question and answer, and we can go from there.
Nate,
Okay.
really quick, Glennis has a question.
Well, no,
Okay.
I don't have a question. I was going to ask if I could start.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
There you go.
so this is pretty much our last piece of undeveloped land in Hideout. And I guess, maybe because of when I came in, I feel like I haven't had like a huge say in how things look in Hideout. And since this is our last big piece of property, I don't want it to be stripped down, totally reconfigured, and a crap load of houses put all over it. I would like to see something, something that incorporates the land, that, doesn't take away a lot of the vegetation, because I think a lot of our problems with stormwater, with trying to grow something else is because we stripped it all away. And, so I'd kind of like to backpedal on just backpedal on the plan. Like, I just, like, personally, I love that we're getting that section that's nothing is in. I don't know, when are we open space? We have that open space there, the little hill. Why don't we just leave the hill and not put anything behind it and have a way for people to hike from the open space to the other open space? And then to preserve some of the vegetation in the new section. Let's just leave it at 1 home per acre. Those are just, I'm just throwing those out there as my, nirvanas. I do like the little, portion where the, commercial area is, and maybe we just densify it there. Those are my big picture, items.
Okay, we sent some drawings to you, Thomas, this afternoon when you asked us to put those together. Can we pull those up? From Paul Watson? It might help a little bit. So I guess what I just heard is you don't want very much density on the property? Is that what you're saying? Because this is the last piece, and I'm just.
Yeah, I think that is what I'm saying. In a nutshell.
Okay.
I mean, I would personally love to see it, nothing on it and have it be, what do you call it? Preserved. But I understand this, other
We should ask the Salzmans how they think of that. I mean, that doesn't seem very fair to the Salzmans just because it's the last piece in town, and they probably think they have some rights also, but.
And let me just jump in. I mean, they do have rights to have under the existing zoning.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is 1 per acre of developable or something like that. But
Yeah.
but that's kind of the baseline. They are absolutely entitled to that, and we could not. They could come in for a permit tomorrow for that.
Yeah.
And Thomas, I can pull those maps up that I emailed if that's easier.
Alicia, did you get those, or did you want me to try to pull those up?
I got them. I'm just opening them up right now.
Here.
And you guys wouldn't have these because this is something Thomas asked me for just this afternoon. And so we put these together for the meeting today. So the planning commission wouldn't have these, but I think they're important to see. It just talks about undisturbed and disturbed open space and et cetera. So I think it's important that we.
Let's. What do you have?
Paul, why don't you go over this?
Okay, so the red is the areas that we are not disturbing. The blue are the areas that we are going to disturb, but then we're going to reseed and revegetate. So and this is broken up into two projects because that's how we were buying it. Phases 1 through 4 is the east half. Phase 5 through 8 is the west half.
This
And
is
so
the west half, and this is the existing house, right?
yes. No. The existing house is just to the left of that circle you just drew.
That's the pond, probably.
Yeah,
roughly
that's the pond. Right
Yeah.
there. That's the house.
So on this 45 acres, we have 17.61 acres that are undisturbed. And then we have 3 acres that we are disturbing, but will revegetate. So that out of the 45 acres, just about 21 acres will be not really undisturbed, but 17 acres is 100% undisturbed. 3 acres will be revegetated. Let's go to the next phases, 1 through 4.
And same scenario, red is undisturbed, blue is going to get revegetated. And yeah, the overall acreage on this part is 69.56.
So if you add those, 30.75 is undisturbed and 11 will be disturbed but revegetated. So we're talking about over half of this site will be, mostly undisturbed.
This.
There's several things we can do because I hear what you're saying. You don't want the whole site to be disturbed. And there's several things we can do. We decided to try not to do retaining walls, but we could do retaining walls and do less undisturbed areas. But I know how you guys don't really like retaining walls, over the 4 feet. But we could do something like that, and that would give us less undisturbed. The other thing we could do is if there was some kind of variance on the backyard setbacks, we could have less undisturbed properties there. If say right now our setback is 30 feet, if we went to a backyard of 10 feet, that 20 feet would go as undisturbed property. So, there's several things we can do to get more undisturbed.
So you're saying if we reduced the setbacks, for example, along.
Yeah.
We might have this area
Smaller building.
undisturbed because it would be maybe common area, et cetera. So
yeah,
in current position.
Those are just things that just off the top of my head that could be done to have more undisturbed.
Let me just say also for this application, the same as what I said for the prior application, that in development agreements, we really discourage variances from our code. If we want to create a new zone to allow something, that's an alternative, but we don't like to. So I think one thing is getting a grasp of what kind of variances they're asking for. There are ways that, for example, with the rear setbacks, you could have the required setbacks and then there could be, open space requirement of a portion of the lot or something like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll
And
see
we're not
that.
asking, Paul, as you know, I'm not asking for any variance. I'm just saying that could open up some more of the property, but our lots are deep enough, wide enough. We're not asking for any variances on the lots at all. So
Isn't there, and Thomas can go through, I thought that there were some things that didn't comply with our code that we should highlight?
Not with the lots.
Just in general. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
maybe not just for the lots. Maybe
Yeah.
the lots are okay, but.
Nate? Excuse me. When you look at maybe the entry road here, what are the, and maybe this is a Paul question, what kind of retaining walls would we be looking at in these areas that are pretty steep when you first enter? What is a typical retaining wall alongside the road? Because I presume there's a fair amount of cut and fill to get the road in there.
Paul, go ahead and answer that.
Okay, and I actually have that in your packet of each phase has a page that is just retaining walls. And I could pull that up as well if that is helpful and put that on my screen. But on page, like on the first phase, it'll be page 9. That has all the retaining walls that we're planning on. And phase 1 through 4 have the most retaining walls. Phase 5 through 7 have very little. And the retaining walls in 1 through 4 really aren't that bad. I do have one wall that is a 15-foot that I'll have to look at again, based on the previous applicant's conversation.
Paul, is there any way you could pull it up or send it to Thomas so we can see what you're talking about?
If you allow me to share my screen, I can pull it up now. I've got it on mine.
Is that possible, Thomas?
Alicia, can he share now? Yep, you're the co-host now. You can share.
Okay. Okay, so this is phase 1 through 4. And so my retaining walls, the ones I've got are, I've got one 15-foot here, which like I said, I'll have to relook at. I've got a 10-foot vertical wall right here, a 9-foot vertical wall right here, 4-foot rock wall, 7-foot rock wall, and that's it on all this. And then on phase
Paul,
2,
let me ask you, like on a 10-foot rock wall, can you make that 2 5-foot rock walls? So, or is that?
it gets difficult. The problem when you start breaking up walls is then you're really not that different than a 2-to-1 slope, because by the time you have a 5-foot wall, a 5-foot setback, then it really doesn't work that well. So if I'm getting rid of this wall or trying to break it up, then I really need to look at changing some of the architecture in the commercial and try to take out some of that in the building. This 4-foot rock wall I think is fine. This 9-foot vertical wall, for example, that one, if we try to step it, then I need to change my commercial and lose a little bit of commercial. So we can do that stuff, but it's a sacrifice for the building.
Okay.
And Thomas, so in your packet that what I emailed you, so you have all of these drawings for each phase. So you have, I mean, the vegetation, your site plan, setbacks, I mean, slopes, maps, drainage, what we're planning on. So you have all kinds of information to help you make your decisions. But yeah, retaining walls here, I don't have a lot of them, but we can get rid of them, but you'll sacrifice square footage in commercial and stuff like that. Because all my walls are down right in these areas. You want me to pull up the walls on 5 through 8?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I need to stop sharing then and then reshare my other screen. So here's the phase 5 through 8. Here's the phase 1 through 4. So down on page 9, retaining walls. So out of this whole site, I've got a couple walls right through here. So I've got a 7-foot, a 10-foot, and a 10-foot.
And that's all we have on that entire site?
That's all I've got right now on the entire phase 5 through 8. But now you made a good point earlier that, I mean, if we want to try to preserve more open space, I can add in more, even more small walls, because those will start to make that open space get bigger. Or sorry, the preserved open space, the stuff that we're not disturbing.
Sorry, who asked the first question? I didn't get their name.
Who started it? Glennis.
Oh, Glennis. Okay, so Glennis, like example, on the first road coming in,
Are
you
we
don't
talking about 1 through 4 or 5 through 8?
no, just 5 through 8, the map you have up now.
Okay.
Like on the second road, or on the top portion of the first road coming in, where we have that little cul-de-sac, where we have all these lots together, like maybe 20 lots. I haven't counted them. I mean, would you be okay if we took out a lot or two and left those as just open space?
Nate, are you thinking, just so
Well, I'm
I'm,
just, any place we have a long run of just lots.
well, that's what I'm wondering. I wonder if it would, I can't annotate now, but I wonder if like,
If you want, I can stop sharing. You can pull up the site plan you had up earlier, then you can annotate.
Yeah, let's do that. Thanks, Paul.
While they're doing that, maybe you can answer, what do you plan to do with the current homestead?
Right now, most likely just sell it. We're gonna break it off into a 3-acre parcel and just sell it.
So it'll be part of the subdivision, but its own lot that's already built on.
were you kind of responding to Glennis noting that like, maybe there could be that are
Yeah.
if, and you know, that could be an interesting way to approach it. If some of the lots got smaller or we were able to preserve more open space, it may not even impact the number of lots, but it would start to allow for some of those breaks in the
Yeah,
continuous.
so you have a break rather than just a long group of lots.
Glennis, is that a step in the right direction or not, doesn't go far enough?
I'm just not happy with a lot of houses. I just, had it up to here with houses, so.
Okay.
I don't think anything's gonna appease me except for one home on it.
But that's a start, removing a couple lines.
Okay.
Could we agree?
What?
That's headed in the right direction if they pull a couple lines.
It's headed in the right
There you
direction.
go, okay.
But. So,
Baby steps, please.
I don't know.
Nate, those lots that you had just thought about maybe just cutting back a little, how large are those lots right now? Are they like quarter acre, half acre?
Well, they're 85 feet of frontage. Paul, you'd have to guess that. I think we have quarters to half-acre lots in here, I believe.
Okay.
Well, they are roughly 110 feet deep, 85 feet wide, which puts those at about
a quarter.
Well, yeah, anywhere from 8,000 square feet to 12,000 square feet, depending on which one we're looking at.
And these are single families?
These
Yes.
are single family.
I think are these townhomes down here on this part of the lot?
Yeah.
Oh.
And if you put both the maps together, that's why we did that.
And yes, those are townhomes.
Yeah.
That would be right here.
Yeah.
This is the property that has the house on it, and this is the property line. Because there's,
Okay, oh, now,
so there are two different properties.
Yeah,
I
the
think
one you're
it's
looking at right now
important
is the
for the planning commission to just kind of think about general plan and over, you know, a rezone is a legislative decision. It's discretionary as long as it's rational. So I think you have to weigh kind of benefits that you get from the project versus uh, impacts by rezoning, comparing it to the rezone. And, you know, that's kind of your base level kind of
Yeah.
evaluation.
Yeah, so I mean, that's all we wanted to do tonight is just kind of get everyone's take on what we're proposing. Hear what you guys have to say, come back at the next meeting for the rezone. And is it just concept approval, Thomas, or is that the MDA also?
I think right now we have it as concept, potentially MDA, but it depends, I guess, how far along with tweaks, et cetera, you get.
Yeah. So a couple things that we've talked about as our group is, you know, we talked about doing the clubhouse. We have the pickleball courts. And one thing that was brought up last time is that you guys need someone to, you didn't really say need someone to help, but we decided we would pay for the engineering of that. I think it's a 12-mile path. So we would do the topo and we would do the design. So you guys could go in and try to get a bond or whatever you guys are doing there. I know you had to have that done before you could go in and get the bond, but those are some things that we talked about not throwing in, but doing as we get approval for the development.
And just for clarification, that was for the spine trail that would go.
Yeah, the spine trail, yeah.
To Camas.
Yeah.
248.
I'd like to see if we could just cut, you know, some of these lots down, that would be great. I like that they're single family with some. And you have a few townhouses down here at the bottom by the, close to the highway. Correct?
Yes.
And then smaller lots down there by the highway too.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, how, I mean, it's hard to tell because there's no measurements on the pictures that we were sent. How far away are those lots by the highway away from 248, these right here? Yeah. Like how far away is that? To me, that seems a little close, I don't know.
There's
Right up against the project boundary
Paul, do
line.
you have that answer, Paul? I don't think it's very close at all because there's a big piece in between us. And then there's a UDOT right of way in between us. So from the highway, I think it's quite, I mean, I don't know the number.
Well, from the property line, we're at 26 feet on the townhomes. And on
from the road, Paul?
No. This is from the right of way. From the road, we are 324 feet from the edge of the asphalt. But
324 feet.
But the UDOT right of way, we're 26 feet to the townhomes, and to the commercial, we are 33 feet. But the same thing with the commercial buildings. We are 330 feet from the edge of the asphalt. Just because that UDOT right away is so big.
And Thomas, again, referring back to the previous project that we were discussing, do they have to be 50 feet from the right of way? Is that my understanding? But they're only 33 feet from it?
That's correct. For that area where the commercial is located right there at the entrance, that would be NMU, neighborhood mixed use. And so that would require a 50-foot setback from that right of way line. So there would be a variance of 17 feet.
Well, we don't want a variance. So are you saying, is it from the asphalt or is it from the right of way?
Right of way line, the property line.
I actually wasn't aware of that. So. Paul, pull that up one more time.
Okay,
Or
let me.
I guess Thomas can.
Which one are you pulling up? Do you want me to?
Well, just the map so we can see how we could address that.
I can put it up my CAD file real easy if that's helpful.
We could do that, or it could be a recommendation that that's something that we
Okay.
work through if that's what the commission wants. It might be hard to design on Zoom.
So I know like in Wasatch County, they have an ordinance that's 50 feet, but if you're commercial, you can be within that 50 feet, I believe. Is that the same ordinance that you guys have, or is it commercial? It's just 50 feet.
Our NMU has that setback along SR 248 at 50 feet.
Okay.
Again, the reason that was because we don't know where they could expand to, or if they ever needed to move the road, et cetera, right? Because in theory, they get to use the entire right of way.
Yeah, we're just kind of unlucky there because we have 300 feet between us and the asphalt, and they're never going to expand that 300 feet.
You do have a wider right of way in
Yeah.
commercial and those townhouses. That is true.
Yeah.
Than most.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get that. We can address that.
Nate, are you proposing that the roads in the development would be private, HOA maintained, or public roads?
Well, we wanted them public, but I think last time you guys didn't like that idea, so we're open. And we're open.
Is there anything else the commissioners really would like for us to look at as we sit down with Paul and Nate?
You know, one thing I want to say, just a thought, because I'd like to hear your guys' opinion, is that 17 acres that were given the city. What if we were to, this is just an idea I have, what if we were to move the clubhouse or the community center over to there, the pool, a big park, and those kind of things over to that side. So you have like a big area that is just for the entire community of Hideout in that 17 acres, rather than have it kind of confined, I want to say, on the acreage that we have there now. I mean, what's your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because I just asked Glynis, where do you see the clubhouse on here? Because you were talking about the clubhouse. And I was gonna ask you where the clubhouse is.
It's right in the commercial area.
So it's in the, oh, that's right. We discussed that last time.
Yeah.
But is that the HOA can manage?
No, well, yeah, we talked about the HOA they can't manage something for the entire community. It just wouldn't be fair. So what we had thought and we talked about is if you guys if you're open to it, we would just give that, we'd build the community center or clubhouse, whatever you want to call it, and give it to the town of Hideout. And they would manage it.
And you're saying move that over to the open space.
It's just a thought because I mean, this is the last piece for Hideout, right? I get it. And I want to do something right by this also. But that you have 17 acres there. We have a great trail system. If we moved everything over there and did like a really, really nice park, tons of parking, community center, the pool, those kind of things, all in that big area. So that's where the entire town knew they could go to go to their activities and all those things there. And we're wide open, whatever you guys want us to do there. If it's a baseball diamond, a soccer, whatever. But you got to understand, to do things like that, you're gonna disturb a lot of that vegetation because it is pretty slopey and a lot of work needs to be done over there. But I mean, done right, it could be a great area to put all that stuff, and it's not confined to a little area, within our subdivision.
And then what would you do with the space where the clubhouse is currently?
leave it open. Just leave it open. Or we could, we could move some units down there and have more open space. We're not trying to add any more units. So I just redesign it and maybe have more open space in the community.
Can you show us, is there, cause my computer is, something happened to it, it's not working. Can you show us where the clubhouse is now?
Paul, can you show that?
Yeah. Okay, let me share my
I think
screen
one of
again.
the challenges
Can't
with
do
that
by the
will be,
pool, but I don't remember.
one of the challenges will be that is dedicated as sensitive lands. A lot of that is 30% slope.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
Could be, it could put us in an awkward position to violate our own ordinances to do stuff. So that's
Well,
a-
there's not that, there,
Yeah, over by the pond.
Yeah, what about over by the pond?
And then maybe we could knock out some of those houses, and then there could be a trail from there to there. That's.
It's not gonna be harder to get to though.
I would suggest that the planning commission not try to design, I mean, it's good to just give input. I think that helps Nate to know kind of what you're thinking about, but I don't know that you want to try to redesign this.
Do an engineer.
I know, it's just, no, I love that Nate is open and to suggestions and is putting out ideas. But I think.
I appreciate that. And, I try to
Yeah.
listen as much as I possibly can. And then, I mean, there's a reason this property's come before you guys 3 different times and no one's been able to perform. And I'm not going to speculate, but I know why. It's, and so it has to work financially, but, we can also do some really cool things. And so, I'm excited about this. And, I appreciate all your guys' comments. And so, we'll take those. And there is some really cool acreage by the pond, and we just have to figure out how to get to it, because there's some behind that wall, there's some cool, there's open space. We were planning on doing a park. It's not showing on there, but we're planning on doing some kind of park type thing in there, but that'd be just like a community, our little development park. The 17 acres, we could do something really cool for the whole town of Hideout. And that's what I envision. But, if you guys want to leave that as open space and not do anything, then we'll put it into our community. But it just doesn't feel as good as it could be in that 17 acres. But I don't know what your plans are for that 17 acres.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we could build on there.
I think,
If we were able to build
I
on.
think Thomas has a good idea of what we were looking for. I think he can. Out there, is that correct, Thomas?
I think so. You mean as we go back and work with Nate and Paul, et cetera? You mean, yeah, I think I have a pretty good understanding from tonight. Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw this out there, not just an idea. If you're concerned about the commercial space not having the 50-foot setback and you have to move that, moving the clubhouse makes sense. Maybe over to near the 17 acres and eliminating 2 lots where you take a right-hand turn to the parking lot to the open space. And putting that there, moving the road where the commercial space is up 30 feet. I don't know, getting rid of the one commercial structure that we have on the right side.
Yeah.
Road 2. I'm just brainstorming. I'm not
No,
saying to do it.
that's easily fixed. We can do all that. That's easy.
Yeah. So just
I
suggestions.
just wanted your opinion. So, if you do it on the 17 acres, you have just a ton of room to go swimming, go play in a park, be in the clubhouse, just those things. If you do it in our community, it's just not as big, right? You just don't have that much room. You don't have 17 acres of open space. So I'm just throwing that out. I'm not adding homes. I'm not trying to add any more units or homes. I wanted you guys to think about it to see what you thought, because this is actually for the community, not just my development, not just me. This is something for the community that we're offering. So
Yeah,
just
and I
wanted your guys' thoughts.
I mean, I like the idea of having that open space back there, but with the 30, was it the 30% or 30-foot drops, and, it's like a valley in there, isn't it? That would be cool, like, I mean, I definitely like what you said, just because of having, if you have the clubhouse there where the parking lot is, instead of just a couple of those, 2 or 3 of those I mean, in that way you can connect to trails in there. And connect to, to something over that way, like where the parking lot is. Because that's where that's parking for that area anyway.
Yeah.
If we could put a pool in there in that area where it says pond. I don't know if that's downhill, that might be too downhill. What does that say? Right there. Oh, right here, I know, but a pool. Did you put a pool over here? Like by the parking lot? Now you would want a pool down here, right? By the open space, no? I'm not an engineer.
We can spend some time designing it.
We can play with that a little bit. I
Yeah,
think.
let us play around with that.
Yeah.
And then just my other concern about that 50-foot setback off the 248 right away on the west property is how much does that cut into that front row of residential homes? If I'm being clear, road 2, what is that? Road 201.
Right now, we have our lots going right to the right-of-way line.
So if we need the 50-foot setback on that as well, Thomas, I assume that's going to affect those properties as well.
Yeah, I'll have to start squeezing the lots.
Oh, this
Yeah,
is
to
something.
answer your question, that would be 50 feet setback, whether it's for NMU or even say R3. So we'll have to look at that, Paul and Nate. We'll take a look.
So is it 50 feet in all the zones, or is it?
I'm scanning it right now, and it's looking like it's pretty much 50 feet in all of the zones. Yeah.
Okay, we'll work on that.
One thing I was gonna suggest for the shoreline phase 4, it's a type of home that, well, actually, no, you're the one who did it. I like how you, in the spring, water spring. What am I getting the name of it?
Your springs, yeah.
Deer Springs, it's getting late. In Deer Springs, I like how you did the single family homes on one side and then the 2-story homes on the other side. Cause I think there's a population of people who like to age in place. And they want, and no, really, I mean, that's great. Who want a 1-story home that has everything in 1 story and, nice, nice views or, whatever. And smaller homes, like, there's not a lot of homes between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a opportunity.
Okay. Well, so I've heard everyone's comments. Is there any other comments? I know it's getting late. And we will make some of these changes and then come back to you hopefully in December. And I'm kind of running out of time on my contracts, and so hopefully I can address your issues and come back in December and see where see what you guys, I guess, for a vote is what I'm hoping.
I have a suggestion. I don't know what everybody thinks about, maybe like, any kind of like picnic pavilion type of thing, like in the open space, so like you could have a group picnic spot?
So that's what we were planning on. It's not showing on there, but that's what we're planning on doing over by the pond.
Okay.
It won't
yeah.
have any parking over there. It'll be a walking park. But that's where we were planning on doing something like that.
Well, then a trail somehow between the open space and
Yes.
the pond would be a suggestion.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
And we've already planned on that. We
Yeah.
have that in our trail plan.
Yeah.
Where's the, oh, no, I thought he was talking about, which open space are we talking about? I'm talking about the
He's
the
talking about
17
over here.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about the one by the pond,
By the house.
by the
Right,
house.
that's-
Yeah,
Right, so where, I mean, so you trail to there from,
over here.
from the other side,
Well, that's what,
okay.
because there's no parking over here, you park over here, but to get from here, if there were a trail, you could.
There is
do that.
there is a trail. I'm not sure it's in the trail system.
Oh,
Yes.
So, but we'll make sure I'm pretty sure it's on the drawings, but I'll make sure that,
That they are on the drawings.
yeah,
that's-
we have a,
Question, do you want this on for a date certain in December, or you want to just leave it,
uncertain.
to be continued, so to speak?
we have some work. I mean, we have some work to do. Hopefully we can make it to the December 19th meeting, but, so I don't know how you vote on that, or if you just say, hey, come December 19th, if you have everything ready.
Okay.
Sure. Public comment coming up too.
This one's not a public comment.
Can I ask a question? Can I say something?
Sorry. It's not open for, if I do it for you, then I have to do it for everybody.
Nate, you have to call me.
Yeah, I'll give you you can call me anytime. Alicia has my phone number. Call Alicia and get my phone number.
Okay.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
To adjourn.
To adjourn.
First, we have to.
No, because this doesn't need to be continued, because it's not, we'll just renotice it. If he's ready to go in December, we'll get it noticed up.
Okay.
Whatever he's presenting.
Nate,
Would
this was
anyone
just a
make
work
a
session.
motion
We'll have to
to,
renotice.
the Elkhorn Springs, to continue it to a date uncertain?
We don't.
We don't? Okay.
That's why I said, okay, motion to adjourn.
Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll-
Second?
Me.
All right, we'll take a vote. Joel? Rachel?
Yes.
Glynis?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And Tony's yes. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Nick.
you.
Comments, appreciate it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Even though